murder mystery in Malden, Massachusetts. That's the topic of this discussion with author Bill Powers. Bill, I want to welcome you to Quincy Access Television.
Thank you, Mark. I'm honored to be here. Really am.
You're an author, but this book, you have actually a couple books to your credit, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. But you're a retired detective lieutenant.
Yes, sir. From the Mass State Police.
Right, and that basically has been, I guess, the material that has appeared in your books, correct?
Yes. Yeah, it's all, it's true crime. Uncut, unfiltered. It's the way we work. It's the way the business is done.
And the book we are talking about today is When the Smoke Cleared. Talk first, before we get to the book, talk about your background. I guess we'll start with how you got into crime solving.
So when I was a young child, my dad was a Boston police officer and went on to become a Boston police detective. And I honestly, from the time I'm old enough to think about what I want to do for a living, I never thought of doing anything else for a living. Fortunately for me, cards fell in the right way at the right time, and I was able to become a police officer. My goal was to follow in my father's footsteps and be a Boston police detective, but under the circumstances back in 1974, it wasn't going to happen. But I did have an opportunity to join the state police, which quite honestly at the time I thought they were road guys that pulled you over on the way down to the Cape. I had no idea the depth of investigation work that they did, and I sort of fell into something that I never anticipated, but I can't imagine a better professional life than the life I led.
We should mention that in the title of the book, When the Smoke Cleared, began as a arson investigation.
It started out as a call to the fire department for a fire in a function room of a small condo complex in the old Malden Mills in Malden, Mass. And when the firefighters got there, it had somewhat extinguished it itself thanks to the heavy sprinkler system. But there was a very, very strong odor of an accelerant which smelled like gasoline. And the Malden detective, John Rivers, who was the first detective on the scene, also was an arson. He specialized in arson as well and had a great relationship. He trained the fire department, and when you see something that looks like it may be, criminal in nature, don't mess up the scene and give me a call. And that's exactly what happened. And John was an old friend of ours, unit to unit. And he initially called in our state fire marshal's office, which is another unit of troopers. And they came and brought the accelerant sniffing dog, Lucy. And as the water receded and the smoke cleared, certain things became evident, some staining, some red staining, that they thought something preceded this fire because furniture had been tipped over, et cetera. Something preceded it. And again, because of the great relationship we had, we are a homicide unit, but it looked as though there's more to this than just a fire. Something happened that was a significant, that resulted in a significant amount of blood, and it was in several locations that we possibly have a homicide here.
And as folks will find out when they pick up a copy of the book, led to a murder of a 14-year-old.
Yes. It was a very long, tedious investigation, but all of us from the very beginning recognized not that we would have a 14-year-old victim. The problem that we had was we had blood. We had what appeared to be a crime scene. We had no victim. We had no reported people missing. We had nobody showing up at a hospital or at the medical examiner's office with significant injuries or death. But we investigated it from that very moment, which is what we do, as though it would be a homicide. Because if we didn't and found out 9 months later or a year later there was a homicide there and we hadn't collected the evidence and we hadn't done the interviews and the canvassing and developed a person of interest, if you will, then we had nothing. So from the very get-go, we were on this as though it was a homicide.
And talk about the process. You mentioned interviews. As I read the book, I realized it's interviews and then more interviews, sometimes even with the same people over and over.
What's more usual than not in a homicide investigation is you go back and you talk to people 2 times, 3 times, as many as 8 and 9 times as you get ready. And you do that not because they're not what they said you don't trust, but maybe you didn't ask all of the right questions. Maybe they were going to learn more information, or we were going to learn more information that would bring you back to ask more questions. Way back when I was a young trooper, starting off in these cases, the feeling used to be you never go back and talk to somebody twice, because then you think that you're basically accusing them of lying the first time, and that isn't the case. And it's all in how you present to someone that we don't distrust you, we don't think you're being dishonest, but we've learned this, and you take it from there. And so in this case, we had done the initial canvass, which you do all the time, and we probably interviewed between 50 and 60 people on the initial canvass. Put together, cobbled some things together, and I would say by the end of the day, we had someone that was definitely a person of interest. But again, we had no body, we had no weapon, we had no motive, and we had no eyewitnesses. But we had a person of interest, which is unusual. It's not usually the way it works. And then we built from that.
I guess talk about how real life differs from what folks might see on TV and a TV crime drama.
I can't say that it differs completely, but pretty much. Because what you see on TV is, whether it's an hour show or it's a news report at night, they get in a 45-second blurb, it's going to be followed up on the next day, and then more news happens and they go away from it. There was another case that the other book is about that involved a homicide of several people, and everybody figures, well, you got the guy in custody, you're done. No, and not even close, because we still have to prove that case beyond a reasonable doubt, every single bit of it. And so it is worked as hard as you can possibly work on a case. And that case, while yes, we had the person in custody right away, the defense was going to be one of insanity. And so that kind of, it adjusts the way that you prepare for a trial, because we need to show the background that led up, the background of the person, what led up to that, by going back through computer records, by going back through telephone records, on and on and on. But we're working these things for months and months and months. And then when you come up for trial, you basically have to pretty much start all over again. You pull everything back out, and then working with the district attorney, then a game plan is put together for how you're about to present this in the courtroom. So it's a ton of work.
When you mentioned trial, there is something called case prep. Yes. And trial prep.
So case prep is the body of work. It's everything that we have done, everything we have put in. And you'll see in the book, Adrienne Lynch, who is the protagonist and also the assistant DA, is meticulous to a fault about everything she does in every case she has. And she knows this isn't a secret. She can drive you crazy with her requests. They're not demands, but pretty close. But every time you go back out and you do a follow-up on something she wants, there's the aha moment that it either closes the door or it opens the door, but you can feel strongly that nothing is going to happen at a trial. There's not going to be a Perry Mason moment where you didn't do something. It's all going to be there. And so the case prep is the overall putting of it together, and then the trial prep is the district attorney deciding, how am I going to present this case to a jury in a logical fashion that makes sense, that rolls along, keeps a pace and a rhythm to it, and that's another art. It really is.
It really is an art.
Yep.
As I was reading, I
Yep.
thought to myself, this is exactly what
Yep.
it is. It's
Yep.
an art. We should mention that Murderous Rage is another book of yours, and
Yes.
that actually happened the same year
The same year.
as this.
I think that book, which actually was initially part of that and then taken out and set up as its own book, is another great example of the way we all work together. And it's a case, it occurred up in Wakefield at a place called Edgewater Technology, and a fellow by the name of Michael McDermott, better known as Mucko McDermott, went on a rampage and killed 7 of his co-workers the morning after Christmas. So it was horrific, to say the least. And again, people would look at that. It got national attention. Martha Coakley, who was the DA at the time, was in Chicago at the airport flying home, and she's watching CNN, and it comes up live. And you know, it was a tremendous media event that lasted maybe a week as far as the heaviness of it. But for us, it took a year and a half to have that case ready for trial and put onto trial.
Let's talk about your upcoming presentation at the Thomas Crane Public Library
Yes.
here in Quincy. That's happening on Tuesday, February 28th from 7 to 8 p.m. What can folks expect?
More of me, I guess. I'm very excited about it for a lot of reasons. One is while I'm born and brought up in while I wasn't born in Dorchester, I can't claim that. I was brought up in Dorchester. My wife and I raised our family here in Quincy. We've been here for 48 years, I think it is now. We came here like part-time and we've never left. We moved once to another house in the neighborhood. So to be able to come into my now community where our children were born and brought up, where our children still live and work, and our grandchildren are, and our friends are, is a great honor for me to be invited to address people. So I'm learning more about giving authors talks, and it will be more about what led me to writing, what led me to writing this particular book. Certainly I'll talk a bit about the book without giving away the whole book. I'm still trying to figure out how to do that, but that's what they can expect that night.
Well, I'm being careful not to give away the
Yes, you're
ending
doing a
of
great
this
job.
book.
Thank you.
But lastly, I guess, what would you like folks to take away from your book?
I think more than anything, and I think this is an exceptional book for, not because of the writer, but because it's a tutorial. It teaches people what goes on in an investigation, what goes in, almost as importantly, if not more so, in a courtroom. How does this thing play out? How do you bring it from, like I say, I got my feet wet on this by standing on a wet carpet at a crime scene. How do I go from there to an ending that we have? And understand that there's a lot that goes into it. And it's not, again, not one or two people. It is a huge grouping of people. I believe in this case we had 51 witnesses. So you can see how it builds together. So I want people to understand that. I think it's a great book for college classes, just to see if this is the kind of work you think you want to do. This is what it takes. This is, you know, it's not watching a TV show and saying, "Oh, I want to be that guy."
Right.
Do you?
And I guess my final question, are there more books in the works?
That's a real good question, because the answer is, I don't know. Right now, this is out. I'm getting good reviews. I have ideas of other books I could write. You get into that fiction versus nonfiction. Somebody said, would you rather write nonfiction or fiction? I said, well, nonfiction, you have to be true to the fault. You can't make a mistake. You can't make something up. I had people say to me, oh, I wish there was a bad cop. Well, that's fiction. This is life. This is the way it was. But then I also say, if I could write fiction, then I have a few unsolved cases that I could end the way that I wanted to, and everything would be fine. So I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say no. My eyes are wide open. This book was self-published. A lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of marketing that's to be done. But if it catches on, I will happily write another book.
Oh, good. You've got me hooked. So I'll have
Thank
to wait. I'll keep me posted.
I certainly will.
I'll check your website from time to time.
Thank
Bill,
you.
it's been a pleasure. Thank you, and good
Thank
luck
you
with
very
your
much.
book.
Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate it.